But I suppose, I mean, since, the conversation is really around how to be a better startup founder, perhaps we
Yeah.
can start with, if we're a founder or a
Mm.
co-founder,
Mm.
how should we be prioritizing our time to achieve, our goal? And also, when we find ourselves not being able to complete, all the tasks on time, because, it can be quite overwhelming, especially.
Yeah. It's an excellent question, Nick, because so I spent the last 5 years working with early stage founders, and I've probably worked with over 3,000 founders. And so what's really interesting is what you're naturally motivated by. It doesn't, you can spend unlimited hours doing that. So whether it's research, whether it is, product design, whether it's, really finding out what really excites customers, is it design, is it engineering? And so some of our best strengths can also be what we call our Achilles heel, which is that too much of it could mean as a new founder or as a founder that you're not prioritizing all the other things in the business. So the first thing we generally like to work on is to give you a holistic view. Well, what is involved in a business? So we used to run accelerator programs and incubation programs where we look at validating every part of your business model. So we look at what we call 4 propositions, and the first one is looking at what's the unique proposition of this. So this is looking at all the features. What is the pain point of your customer? Who are your customers? What is it that you're trying to solve? And then we look at delivery proposition. Well, how do you get this product to your customer? Is it offline? Is it online? Is it B2B? Is it B2B to E? Like, how do you get it? And then we look at what's your financial proposition, like what's the revenue or financial model of that business. And then the last one is your overview. Why are you 2 or 3 the best people in the world to do this business right now? And so often when we look at the metrics, the financial numbers don't balance either the delivery or the value proposition. So the customer it's not for the right customer, it's not right for the target market. If you're targeting millennials, maybe they won't pay for it. And if you're doing it offline, maybe now they're all online. So those are all, like, in a nutshell, the things in a business. So the way you need to prioritize it is getting a very clear picture who is responsible for each of those areas, and making sure that you validate and test all those assumptions. Because if you don't test, with at least a minimum of 100 customers that want your product and are willing to pay for that price, you could spend all your time just working on something and prioritizing the wrong time working on the wrong thing. And so that's the number one challenge. It's usually the financial metrics don't balance the other two is the biggest thing I see. And I'll give you an example. For Global Entrepreneurs Week, I ran a workshop with local startups in Singapore. There's about 40 startups. There's a couple of students and a lot from the co-working space. And this was an MBA banker. She had spent $80,000 building a travel app. And in the workshop, at the end of the workshop, she went to me and she's like, "Oh, what do you think of my travel idea?" And I asked her some very basic questions around, well, who's your target market? Who are you building this app for? And she says, for Singaporean families who are traveling to Vietnam, because she really loved her experience traveling across Southeast Asia. And I said, okay, and how often do Singaporean families travel? And she's like, once every 3 years on average. And I'm like, okay. And then how many of them travel to Vietnam? Like, how many times do they go? She's like, once in their life. And I'm like, so you're building an app for a one-time customer. And I was like, so you have to acquire new customers all the time. And she's like, oh, do you think my idea is bad? I was like, I don't think it's bad. I just want to know, like, and I said, why just Singaporean families? Why not everyone across Southeast Asia? And why just Vietnam? Why not all of Asia? Like, and then I just sort of shared to her, I'm part of these, a female solo traveler group on Facebook. I'm like part of 20 of these groups. This is a target market that actively travels. I'm like, why not target them? And then and so I just said, I encourage people just to do small mini validations around their assumptions before they build a full product, because it could be a really expensive way to start your business. So the first thing is prioritize. What is the business? Who's responsible for what? And then looking at what are your natural strengths or motivators, and are you in the right role? So I see a lot of COOs and CEOs in the wrong roles. Like they should switch sometimes. So it doesn't feel like it's work because you're naturally motivated to do some of these functions or tasks, but getting a really clear picture on what you're good at, what you're not good at, and then all the tasks that's involved in running a business is a good start to work out how to prioritize. But testing and validating that, do customers want this product for this price point right now?
Right.
Hmm.
I think I got two things out of that I would like to explore. I think the first one, and I suppose is the easiest next question, I guess, is how do you validate it with little to no resource? I mean, say you have an app idea like the lady you spoke of as an example, but you don't have $80,000 to be building an app, right?
Yeah.
What is a good way to be validating it and providing them a service that they will pay for without spending anything?
Yeah, so I generally like, first of all, to test like mini hacks, like on the assumption. So, what is your target market group? So, let's say we were targeting these female solo travelers that I was in. I would just I would join all of these groups. I would try to meet as many of these solo female travelers, and then start to build surveys around, hey, where have you traveled in the last 12 months? Like, what do you on average spend? Like, if there was an app that did XYZ, would that be interesting to you? And you're like, yeah, that would be interesting, but my current pain point is I would love a easy way to exchange money. And so you're starting to collect all these insights. So I say, go and find 100 people, whether it's from Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, email friends, join university groups. Like, where do they hang out? What do they do? Are they part of sports club? Do they hang out at WeWork? Like, what does this target market do? And then survey 100 of them, and to see if there's any commonality. Going, interesting, this idea or assumption that I had for a travel app, the biggest pain point that they had was finding, credit card payments on paying for their trip, or and they might find some unique insights to then build the first thing without spending $80,000. I mean, it may just cost you, some time and find, a bit of marketing, but I would join the group. And then also, if you're really struggling to find people in that target market, that's already a good indicator to you. Is this the right business to build if you're struggling to even get access to these people to, test your assumptions? Because often I meet so many people that, oh, I don't know where to find these people. And I was like, well, how are you going to build a business? Like, if this is a core business that you want to build. So often we see the successful founders are from industries or connections that they're from. Like, if I'm from property or development, I'm going to be able to, know some unique insights to, hey, I should build a marketplace for, smart cities, apps, or whatever it is, a marketplace of apps. That's like one of the insights already. If you're struggling or there's no one in your team that has access to that group of people, but that's the easy way to, without spending a lot of resources, give you some good signs. And then I've seen people who like not have 500 people, have 5,000 people going, I would love that product. And all they did was just do a referral kind of, do you know anyone that does this? And they share these surveys, and then they went back out to the survey going, hey, if you come to this evening, and so they immediately got early customers. So those are some of the ways that you can not spend a huge amount of money, but yeah, really just test. Or you may have a friend who, let's say they're trying to survey maybe the WeWork, like tenants are really, really good travelers, or that target market. They could go to WeWork, hey, could we run this event night? Can we run it 3 times? Can we do surveys? And so you may find a partner that has access to those people. Or it could be, Fitness First or Virgin Active, like, who are these active types of people? What do they do? And then find a partner where you can test a bit of a survey, and then that starts to build your business model around how would you acquire customers.
Got it. So if I could rephrase, and correct me if I'm wrong,
Yeah,
I suppose, is it more to the goal is to validate the business before we validate the product.
100%. Yeah.
Got it.
I think the product, you're validating what's the first thing you need to build for that product. So we always talk about what's a nice to have and what's a must have. And so you'll hear sometimes the terminology, is it a vitamin or is it a painkiller? So if these customers are currently in this pain, they're going to pay for that painkiller to get rid of it. But if this is a nice vitamin, it's a nice to have, it's, it's going to help with my health or help. So, it doesn't make a difference. And so we know if there's a real demand for, like, if they know that this is a big challenge for that market, they're really going to take off, because people are like, that's a no-brainer. The price point, location, accessibility. So that's what you want to test. Your assumptions is that the right fit, and that's where you build your first, I guess, feature of that product.
Got it. Yeah, that makes sense. And I guess the next question that I wanted to ask, based on the first thing you were mentioning, was really the job fit of co-founders, right? You mentioned that most of them, or some of them, find themselves not in the right role. They take on the CEO role or COO role when it's not right for them. But I'm sure in their minds, they would obviously have these aspirations, right? I want to be the CEO, I want to be the head of sales, etc. So if they're, how do we? I mean, it's one thing to be able to for someone to realize it's not the right role, but it's another thing to convince them to take on a role that best fits them. In your experience, what is a good way to convince them that you're not in the right role and this would be better for you?
Well, so the first thing we do with any of our programs, we use a tool called Fingerprint for Success. And so that's the company I now work on. It used to be one of my portfolio companies. And so the first thing we want to do with founders is just have, some real self-awareness going. These are things that I'm naturally motivated. And one of the biggest thing I noticed is, you're right, a lot of people have the aspiration to, be a founder, be successful, CEO, want to do an exit, want to build a unicorn. But however, some of the core things that they need to do, they need to have 5 core things. And one of them is what we call really high initiation. So, and you hear this terminology around hustle, right? When we talk about sales, like, they're going out there, they're hustling, they're trying to get business, they're trying to get revenue, they're trying to build. And so when a lot of founders come to me and they're in my incubation program, I'm like, why are you sitting at your laptop every day? Shouldn't you be out hustling? Like, go out, get customers, get tests. And so one of the things we're able to do with FRS is really show you that reality gap, that as much as you love, what you love is building or creating a solution, but you may not love the hustle bit. You may not love the bit going out to customers or getting rejected. You may not like the bit where you have to fundraise for capital. If you have to raise your angel round, your seed round, you don't want to ask your friends or your family for money, and building, and so you start to see a lot of these behaviors is actually really, really challenging for them. So when you upfront know that, actually, if I'm really going to do this, I have to raise capital, I have to build it fast, I have to have high initiation, I have to be a leader and lead a team. When you know where are some of the gaps, then you can start to work on those. So a lot of the founders I work with weren't comfortable fundraising. So that's easy. We can work with them. We can, practice. We practice pitching every single week for 8 weeks. And at the end of 8 weeks, they were just like, everybody wanted to invest in them. So it was just a confidence around pitching, and then pitching to all the different types of investors, and just that feeling of, being rejected or saying no to. And I'm like, it's not no, it's just not now, because you're maybe not communicating the right things, or this investor cares about B2C products, or this investor cares about a cybersecurity, like, just find out. So a lot of it is just building that communication and awareness of their styles to get them to that stage. And then I guess in the cases where we've had a role swap is, after a period of time, if you look at, whether it's 3 months, 6 months, or 12 months, and then you reverse and look at, well, what are the results we achieved? And, and you start to feel, oh, we haven't done enough, or we're busy just being operational. You can then just go, well, maybe we should look, is there a leadership or strategic review on a regular basis, like even on a monthly basis, going, and who's holding who accountable? Because this is the biggest problem, is if the founder's just busy doing, and no one's going, hey, Nick, it's been a month. You have no revenue still, no customers, like you've, been updating the website like every week. Like, so it's, so having some feedback on people who have been there and done that is really or being part of a group that has done that so that you can know, hey, how would you hack this or how did you get this? I think is really important. So I know, I don't know if you know Quest Ventures in Singapore. So James Tung was telling me that, they have a Quest family WhatsApp group and everyone is mentors one step ahead. So if you're a Series A company, you mentor a seed company. If you're a Series B, you mentor a Series A, Series C, and then vice versa. So then it stays fresh in terms of the advice because that person's just done what you're trying to do. So I think that's another really good way as well, just to understand from others, like, did you have this challenge in this role? Did you know you had to do this? But I think as a founder, you have to be super flexible and be able to take feedback and be able to just try it out, like, and learn so that you could be growing or successful. I find a lot of those who aren't open to advice or feedback just may stay stuck. Like I've seen startups from 4 years ago that are still trying to raise their seed round. And so, and I was like, oh, and they're still going to workshops and they're still trying. But if you don't have that self awareness, like I said to you, it could be like an Achilles heel because you love doing that. You could just be, as for those who are high on details and high on problem solving and high on information, it could be analysis paralysis. So they just keep information, and they're not progressing on their business journey. And then also being realistic as well, because there's a huge financial impact. Like you could be in like a job, you can be, you could have a young family, like the others might need to support you. So being, it's important to have those goals so that you can reflect, well, we didn't hit our 1 month, 3 months, 6 months, 9 or 12 months goals. What should we be evaluating, or should we make some other decisions around, is this the right role for me? Maybe I should switch roles. So some results and metrics attached to that, because I just know with a lot of startup founders who love building products, can do it for 8-10 years and be happy with that because that's their passion. However, it's not resulting on growth or revenue or in terms of their overall vision.
Right. Yeah, I suppose that is the tricky one, especially if you're really passionate about your goal or your vision, and you're patient. That's another one, right? Where you think I'll keep going until it succeeds. I suppose in a way, or I guess the real question is how should we be holding ourselves accountable, especially if I mean, because I'm assuming there are a lot of other factors as well, because there's probably timing of the market.
100%. Yeah,
Uh,
100%.
maybe
Yeah,
you don't have
yeah,
the budget to build something,
yeah.
just for whatever reason. So how should you be thinking about keeping realistic milestones without giving up at the wrong time?
Yeah, so one of the things, because my background is I'm a civil mechanical engineer, so my world is everything's about data and making data-driven decisions. So what data is telling you that you should build this business? And then, like I said, I was with validating what are customers telling you, what is the market telling you. So in every, I guess all of your decisions should have some sort of evidence to back why you're continually doing this. If your competitors are selling this product, 5 times more expensive or 5 times cheaper, like, you've got some data to play with, when you make decisions. So I think, as part of a business, you should have some financial goals, customer goals, partnership goals. Like there are metrics that you can measure. So I think when you don't have them, it's easy to spend 3 months, 6 months going, oh, this customer said this and this customer said that, and you're building those things, but it's not, growing the company or the business. And so so that's one of the things that if you want to know limited budget, you've got a time frames, have some metrics that you're measuring against and you can baseline. So let's say you're trying to get, let's say, 10 leads to convert 10 leads into 2 customers per month. And then you review it over 1 month, 3 months, 6 months. And then, you know what? You didn't convert 2 customers, but you converted 1 in the first month one in the second month, and then, two, and then three and month four. And then you can start to learn from that data, going, well, why did we only convert one? Maybe our marketing brochures weren't good enough. Maybe we weren't communicating the right language. Maybe we didn't have enough examples of case studies so that other customers go, oh, I get it. You have, SAP as a customer. Of course, we want to be a customer too. They didn't understand how you solved that challenge. And then all of a sudden you got three, you got four, and then you can hire new people to do more. But what are you learning to build your data resources so that you can do it faster? Now you've done it in one market in Singapore. How do you go to 4 markets across Southeast Asia? How would you do it for Indonesia? So it's, again, what data are you collecting to make, insightful decisions, rather than it's just gut, or, is it just timing? Well, what is the market saying? So, we talk about, there's a lot of market research that you do to look at where is the list of your target customers, and what is the percentage of, that you could get, that you could already have networks. And if you don't have the networks, how would you get it? And then, you may run a 1 month or a 3 month trial going, actually, we've partnered with all these people who have these networks and we still didn't convert anybody. So all of it's learning so that you make insightful decisions in the business. But if you're not collecting constantly, whether it's like, everything has a digital footprint, there is no reason why. Like when I was running, I ran pitch competitions for 4 years, and I sought after the top 14 innovative companies across APAC and ASEAN, and I took them to China every year. So I had metrics all around what needs to be on the landing page, how many touch points do they need before they convert. They had to see us at least 6 to 10 times. They needed to see examples of the other startups that we took to China. What's the result of getting the prize in China? We had a winner in China. So these were all the things that build your, and so every time I could run the competition, I knew exactly what to roll out. But the first few times it was just word of mouth, going, hey, do you know somebody that's, is fundraising right now that would be interested in winning $1 million in China? And so the first few times is just testing, but once you get that data, you'll be able to learn. And then that's the whole point of, evolving really fast and learning fast, failing fast. We talk about doing things fast. And if you're not collecting the data, then you may make decisions much, much, much slower, at which point you could be a risk in terms of cash flow and your business not getting enough customers, and not having enough then to pay for resources. So it all has that knock-on effect.
Got it.
Hmm.
Because I noticed that many of the big startups, like the unicorn level startups, they tend to revolve around one data point or one metric. Whether it's monthly recurring revenue, or number of desks sold, if it's a co-working space. Is that how we should be thinking about collecting our data? Just ultimately focusing on that one goal of the business, or should we at the start be focusing on multiple data points?
Yeah, that's a really, really great insight. Like usually the unicorns is, so you're laser focus. And then having that one key metric is a good indicator of that overall business. So if you look at Airbnb, if you look at Uber, you look at all of these unicorn companies, if you can then the whole company focus on how do we get more, in our two-sided marketplace, how do we get more drivers? How do we get, more, desks, seats? How do we get more, houses or apartments to stay in for Airbnb? So that really laser focuses the whole company, and then the rest of the market on the other side of the market, then you can start to build. So it's really important to just have one. If you have too many, you could try to be, let's look at this, and then let's look at the revenue. Let's look at, how many daily active users. If there's too many, then you don't really know which one. There should be one or two really key ones. That's a good indicator how healthy that business is. And then, and I guess if you're in the startup world and you're playing the capital raising game, this is a critical metric for you to then compare to, well, how fast are all the other companies growing? So Y Combinator in the US, generally it's 20%, month on month growth is a good indicator of a fast growing sort of SaaS product. So, you can benchmark yourself against others, going, are we growing fast enough? We're only growing 10% or 8%. So it gives you a useful indicator as well, but it may not be relevant if you're in a different market, because that may work in the US market, may be different in India, different again in Pakistan, and there's a lot of emerging markets in Southeast Asia that some of those metrics may be, completely different. But at least having that one key one, like, is really helps focus the entire company. And also that metric should also tie into the number of users and customers. So if that, that if you have more desks occupied, there's more desks available, then there's more revenue sort of coming in. So they all should be interlinked, but having that one key one that everyone can see, really supercharges the company.
Gotcha. I think it's a nice segue to the next question, because you brought it up in a way, and that's on capital raising. I know because when I go for these like startup pitches or networking, I always hear these startup founders mentioning that, oh, I'm gonna raise capital now, I'm seeking investment. Sometimes it seems premature, sometimes it seems too late. I think a good way or a good question for me at least is to find out when's a good time anyone should be raising money for their startup, so that they're not wasting the money essentially.
Yeah, I think my honest opinion is I don't think it's ever too early to have an investment conversation. So I know lots of different founders. So I'll give an example. I mentored as part of this program called Crib, and it was basically female entrepreneurs starting businesses. And they asked me the same question, and I said, you never know. You could be in a cafe, you could be talking to someone, and then you're building this product, and then that person will like, I'm interested in that because I have a network that does this. I actually own a cosmetic company. Like this particular business was a tailor-made skincare products for your skin, based on the exact type of skin that you have. And they went down and they were spending a lot of time doing these pitches, and a lot of the investors were more interested in a tech business than a cosmetic sort of skincare business. And then in the end, her husband works for a big tech company, and his best friend invested 100K just like that. Go, oh, I'll invest in you. So you never know when like it's never too. I don't think it's ever too early. But if you are going after VCs or like, it's really good to know what are they looking for, so that you don't waste that opportunity, that you go in there with just a half idea that you haven't validated, and that you don't have access to those networks. So it's really important that if you just think of like a first date, it's about that first impression. And so, oh, I met Nick, he was talking about this idea, he's pivoting, he's doing a real estate play. So that's the first touch point. And then the second time, oh, you found a tech co-founder that was the ex-property guru, blah, blah, and so each time they meet you, it starts to get more and more exciting. So it's, and I go, oh yeah, I remember that you said you were interested in building a product, that you're interested in raising. And so that I know, being an investor, you're always collecting data points on founders. And so some majority, I would say 95% of the companies we see are just too early. Like, they're either pre-product, it hasn't been validated, or the financial model hasn't been validated. So different investors have very, very, very different appetite. I met investors that invested $1 million after 10 minutes. And then I have ones that just, like Cocoon Capital, only invest in 5 companies a year. So they see a lot of deals, and they only pick 5. So everyone has a different, sometimes, investment thesis or strategy. At Investable, we were industry agnostic, tech agnostic, and geography agnostic. We didn't know what the best founders were in which markets, and we don't know which location, so we didn't limit it. And then, so I know some that are just only look at blockchain deals. Some only look at farming, agriculture. Some look at anything that's SaaS, B2B SaaS. So it's good, before you meet investors and pitch them, do some due diligence on who's in their investment portfolio, see some of them on the panels, and then just prepare yourself so that when you do have that meeting, it's the you make the first best impression. But, if you meet them at a coffee or a dinner, like there's no harm going, hey, I'm looking at to build this, new product. Would love, at the right time to meet with you, go further, get some advice, get some mentoring. Anyone who's in the early stage that I find are passionate about helping founders. So, they'll usually give you very useful feedback. But there's just so much information on the internet now. Like, it's almost impossible. There's no reason why that you're not doing a good pitch deck. There's like so much information online. So for the ones that, just are not learning or doing the research, it's also an indicator to investors that, that's also a sign as well. So we also judge founders by their pitch deck, going, what is this word art PowerPoint presentation? Oh my God. Stay away. That's a concern, right? So, but yeah, I don't think it's ever too early. And I think it's just, the biggest thing is just knowing what you're up for in terms of expectations. If you are going on that journey, then you really need to, it's quite a long game. You have to be raising capital for Series A, Series B, or maybe you have the upfront conversation where you only raise up to Series B and then you may want to be acquired. So there's lots of different sort of strategies, but one, it's just building that rapport and finding an investor that, you trust. And I think it's just as important to speed date investors and not whoever's write the checks first, like, because, you're essentially in a relationship, but like for the companies we've exited, on average, they're 7 years. So, that's a minimum sort of relationships that you have to be in with some of our exits. So you want to, have, that you have a good relationship with this early stage so that they can also help you get to the next stage. And nowadays there's just so much funds out there that you would want to make the money work harder and find some strategic partners. Well, what do these investors, what would they offer? Well, they have, portfolio companies X, Y, and Z that they could partner with, or they already have a partnership with a Series B company that usually do follow on. So yeah, I mean, the biggest thing I know that if you're really early going to these events, it takes sort of it's like doing a master's degree. It kind of takes 2 years just to know all the language and the different types of term sheets and, like all of those things that you have to manage in your startup. And so it really helps if you've got friends or you're part of a community that already have built a startup. Or I always advised all my interns, why don't you intern at a startup? So that's one of the fastest way to learn about what a high growth startup is. And then I would do the opposite. I would go work for a corporate. I'd work for lots of different types of companies so that you just have already some different strategies and models to work off. If that's all then it's very hard to, you're not in an environment to learn off others. But that's what I would do if I get to, if I had a second chance and got to do university again, I would just try to intern at as many high growth startups as I can, because learning off those cool founders, like what about machine learning or AI or how to build other tech products, I think that's really, really an important future skill to have. Yeah.
Got it. Oh, it does sound like it's almost in parallel to building your business. You should really be building a network of investors or people who've done it before you, so that it's almost like an encyclopedia of, in a way that you can tap on. Is that a fair assessment?
Yeah, absolutely. Like, absolutely, because that's going to be one of the fastest way to learn, right? So if you met a founder going, don't do that, don't raise from, these guys, it could really hurt your business, or you may not want to go down that corporate route. But I think it really helps. And because, one of the biggest things that we know, the stress levels of being a founder, like your family's thinking, why would you give up your law degree or a banking investment job or, some sort of job security to do this? Because there's a lot of uncertainty attached to it. And so they go through, from a mental health point of view, these highs and lows, ups and downs. Like I know all of them right now, the pressure of what's happening with, COVID-19 and being able to survive and their cash flow to ride it out, especially if you're in the hospitality, travel, or F&B. Like there's so many businesses that are affected right now. So, so having a network like that's really, really going to help. Like just being able to talk to another founder and go, hey, what do you recommend to do? Some may go, you know what, let go, 80% of your team just so that you can survive it. And then when the business comes back online, then, hire them again if the opportunity comes back. But, so hearing that and not feeling like you're just alone and making these really, really big and stressful decisions. And it's important to lean into that. So I think, like that's really important to build that on the side. And then if you have friends who are investors, can give you some friendly advice as well. So I do that all the time. I did a call today. I've got a founder who's about to join a startup friend. He's leaving a really secure corporate job, and he goes, I don't know if I should do this, And so just having an investor as a friend, just to give you some friendly feedback, is super useful. And then so bouncing ideas is like super critical. Then, you went from, 2 options to now you've got 5. And then the more people you talk to, you go from 5 to 10, and then it doesn't feel so scary when you only got plan B. So I highly recommend it. Yeah.
That's true. And I'm glad you brought it up, because I think that the the next question I have is really around what advice would you give founders to help them be or at least feel more resilient during the difficult times. I know you brought up COVID-19 now, but any difficult time, what advice do you have from your experience?
Yeah, so one of the biggest challenges I see with founders is just one, not being able to talk about it. So a lot of it is just you're thinking about it, you're feeling it, but you don't feel like I can't talk to my co-founder. So it's really important you talk to your co-founder so you share that. But for those solo founders who don't have co-founders, a lot of them are doing it tough on their own because they have to, obviously they can't share with their employees, and they don't want to share with the investors because they don't want to alarm them either. And then they don't want to tell their family because, again, finding people, friends, or some friendly people where you can just talk about it is really important, because the feeling can accumulate. So if you imagine I was able to talk to Nick and then, I feel better about it. But if I not telling anyone and then something else happens and something else happens, and then my grandmother's gone into hospital, and my family from overseas has they've had health issues, and my cousins lost their job, like it starts to accumulate. And that's when the resilience, when you may have only built it up for 1 or 2 things, now when you've got 20 things and 50 things, it can really, really have a really mental health and physical health. And this is where I see a lot of burnout, because you're just taking on the burden, you're doing everything. So 1, being able to talk about it. 2, maybe journal. Like I highly, highly recommend. Just so happen to have. So I'm a huge believer of journaling, because I'm very, very, like I've been doing it since I was 18, and I write down all my goals and I talk about my goals. And I find the more you write about it or talk about something, the more likely you're going to achieve them. I wrote down a goal to come and to move to an island, to move to Singapore back in 2013. I mean, I only moved here in 2018, but I just happened to come through, via a journal that wrote it down somewhere. And I was like, oh my God, I actually, because I thought it was by random chance I ended up here. I was like, oh my God, I wrote this as a goal. Like I really wanted to move to a hot island because Australia wasn't hot enough. But yeah, so journaling also gets it out. So it's not just manifesting on the inside of your thoughts and your feelings. So that's the next thing. So talk to someone, journal it. And then, just really important to be part of a network. Like, I can't stress that, because the same concept with, I've got a young child who's a 2-year-old, that we always say it takes a village to raise a child. I think it takes 4 villages to raise a startup. That's my, like what I've seen with one of our portfolio companies, Canva, and seeing them on their growth journey. Like they needed to utilize all of their networks and connections from their angel round to their seed round to Series A. And it's like, I can send you this Melanie Perkins, the CEO. She did it's called the butterfly effect of all the investors that led to this investor that led to that one. Like it didn't happen overnight. They've got, I think they share stories around they had over 100 rejections before they got there. So that's the other thing about resilience as well, is getting rejected, being okay with no, going, okay, Nick said no, let's find out why and let's learn from that. So I think if you're trying to build a perfect product so people love it, like it's the sexiest iPhone or it's, a wonderful Apple product, like you have to be okay to get feedback and get no's and get rejected. So that's part of the learning. So being okay to fail, being okay to say it's okay to fail. And I know that just being in Singapore for the last few years, that's a big thing. Like I had one of my interns tell me that, in their entrepreneurship program, it's like fail fast, build products fast. And one of their parents called up the program manager of the entrepreneurship program and said, how dare you tell my son that it's okay to fail? It's not okay to fail. So, like this, so it's kind of the inverse in terms of culture and conditioning. And it's kind of taboo to talk about, things that are negative or not positive. And so I think it's just, we have to build this new culture of it's okay to, fail. It's okay to talk about our feelings. It's okay to say we're not feeling okay. And I think because there's so much stigma attached to it that people don't are worried if they reveal that, then they're not good enough or they're not successful, and it comes with all these other labels. So I think there's some real opportunity, and that's what I'm really excited about working in Singapore. Like once you start to open it up, then it's okay for other people to open up. But that's one of the biggest why I think it's and I think that's also the reason why there hasn't been more unicorns and success stories that are, replicating the US, because, they're less scared to, fail. Like I met a 23-year-old that was part of already 5 startups, because that's part of the learning process. We started this at 17, like that's just accepted in that whole culture. And that's why, Silicon Valley is the way it is. It's that culture. And so, so that's one thing I think is a real opportunity, especially for Southeast Asia. For founders to create resilience that, it's okay. Let's, and then also be supportive of each other as well as part of the growth. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I think having good support is really important. And I think you're right. And now that you pointed it out, I kind of notice it as well, is that, in the US or maybe in all Western countries, when you fail in your startup, it's still kind of a badge of honor because you went
Yes.
for it. But in Asia, it's still a bit of a scarlet letter because, people will be like, you failed. Guess you're not very good at this.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, I guess shifting your mindset not away from what you're culturally thought to think, I think
Yeah.
just as important. Which leads me to my final question, because I'm mindful of your time as well.
Mm.
Um, you've been through as an investor, and now you're working within a startup as well. Um, Knowing what you know now, what would you advise the Annie who was just starting out in this journey of entrepreneurship, so that she may be, a little bit more successful than you in however you define success?
That's a great question. So in hindsight, I guess one of the biggest learnings that I've had is when I was because I spent my first 15 years in property and real estate and project management development. So one of the things I realized, my project management engineering skills were transferable to sales and marketing, and then my sales and marketing skills were transferable to coaching, and coaching then into investing, and then now investing back into tech startups. And so my advice is, like with entrepreneurship, like you're not just labeling I'm just an engineer or I'm just in marketing or sales or I'm just a community manager. You're everything that you ever learned in your life, whether it's in your personal life, if you do charity work, if you're part of a theatre group, if you play sports, like you're learning, competitiveness, team collaboration, you're learning something, and all of these skills are completely transferable in everything that you do and how you communicate. So I feel like, the only thing I would have, I was at crossroads. I had 3 or 4 different opportunities, and I didn't know which one to choose. So, if I were to advise my earlier self, if I could have, redone like a month, internship with all of them before, choosing this is what I wanted to do rather than just learn on the job as I go, that would be the one key thing, like before I jumped in going, you know what, this sounds like the best opportunity right now. But I would actually go and just using my own advice around testing and validating which one would it be, because sometimes you just don't know until you do it. And it's the same with, for me, the biggest thing, it's around people. I love working with people. And especially, I want to build lifelong friends. And so that's a huge part. And so for me is I don't really mind so much what I would do, but I really care about, is this the right people that I want to build this culture with? And so I'm really happy that I had to have lots of different experiences with that, so that now when I'm at Fingerprint for Success, I really truly appreciate the people that I work with. Because I think often when you're trying to work with very, very high performing people, you can take a lot of things for granted. Right. And then now I realize, you know what, I just miss, there was our finance manager in our team. She was the only one that remembered my birthday. So it's just little things like that just made me, wow, that makes a difference to me. So I know that different people get excited about different things, but for me, it's like the time that we were together, that we're building something great and amazing for someone, but it's building that relationship. So so I would just advise everybody in terms of your foray into entrepreneurship, that it's everything that you learn, that is completely transferable. So don't think for a second, oh, I don't have enough tech skills, I don't have enough this. There are a lot of strategy or problem solving, communication, people skills that are completely transferable. So obviously 5 years ago I had no idea I would be doing this, but I'm super excited. So just being open to opportunities and conversations. And this was a recommendation by one of my co-founders who said, I think you really like this role because you love the people side. So I'm really happy where I am now.
Fantastic advice. So right now you're working for Fingerprint for Success. For the listeners who don't know what it's about, maybe you can tell them what it is, and maybe if they can try it out for themselves as well.
Yeah, that'd be awesome. Okay, so a little bit of background. The 2 entrepreneurs I work with in Australia, Krill Price and Trevor Folsom, they were Aussie entrepreneurs who exited in 2008. They exited for about 110 million, their business at the time, and both of them then spent a few years doing philanthropy and giving back to social enterprises before, and then they also did a lot of early stage investments before starting Investable as an angel club. So the founder of Fingerprint for Success, she was their business coach who coached them all the way up until an exit. She also sat on their board. She's one of the leading pioneering coaches in Australia and been coaching successful entrepreneurs around the world. She, in 2013, had a thesis. She had a thesis that she noted with all of these successful people that she was coaching, and it didn't matter if they were celebrities or athletes, every business that they worked on, they were always successful. And she noticed there was some correlations to how they were all motivated. So she did a partnership with the University of Head of Psychology with the University of Sydney and a university in the UK, and they ran all of their statistical modelling over I think 1,000 business leaders and over 200 successful entrepreneurs. And so in 2016, she released a white paper report, and she decided to build a tech that reveals basically your motivations, and then how do you benchmark against those successful entrepreneurs and business leaders. And so the category in the platform, entrepreneurs who successfully started and exited within 5 years between 6 million and 1.2 billion. And the business leaders were growing 20% year on year, profitable businesses on average between 20 and 40 million. And so there's over 1,000 business leaders. So she ran all these correlations and were able in the white report release what are the factors involved that correlate to venture success, and what are the factors involved correlated to venture failure. So we know that if a founding team, and this is the data that I've been collecting over the last 5 years, we know in a founding team, if you don't have these 5 motivations within the team, you're highly likely going to fail in the first 3 to 5 years. And so these people have to be motivated by initiation, big picture thinking, motivated by what we call internal reference. So they have their own criteria when they make decisions. They're also motivated by what we call automatically convinced, which is they trust their gut intuition. They don't need a lot of information. They'll make decisions. And the last one is high on commercials, high on money. And so, Investable was her first investors and said, "You're not scalable. Having a 4-year wait list as a coach is great, but not a scalable. We really need you to help all the founders." So Fingerprint for Success was my secret sauce when I was profiling all of these early stage startups. And so it's not what you say you do, it's what you actually do. So I got to watch people over time, and internally we used to have a joke, you can't help but be your FRS, like if you're high details or high product. So when I was saying to you, when I see all these founders, I just got to observe their behaviors. And then after profiling thousands of founders, I have a really good idea what makes a really good product manager, a CTO, how are they motivated? And a lot of the time it's just a different language. Most CTOs or COOs are motivated by solving problems, or moving away from a problem or a pain. And then a lot of CEOs are very motivated by goals, and sometimes it's just a mismatch of that language. So I'm saying, Nick, how do we get more customers, more tenants in? Let's get 50 by the end of the month. And a COO or CTO are going, well, how do we solve all of the customer issues or learning or platform so that it's seamless so they can onboard faster? So, it's coming from a different lens. They may not get motivated by the 50 number or the number of revenue. They get motivated, how do we solve these problems so we have happier customers? And so, yes, I've been using this tool deeply. And then when I retired from Investable, that was the biggest epiphany I had. It was early stage investment, such a long game. And, like I said, some of our exits were, at the 5 to 7 year mark. But I feel like the biggest game changer is being able to help founders grow, because you go from 3 people to 10 to 20 to 50. Canva went from 3 people and now they're just under 1,000 people. And they grew, Series B to Series D in less than 2 years, and into 4 locations. So I feel like the biggest, the biggest drive or the biggest impact we can have is really helping founders become the leaders that they need to be to deliver on their vision. So actually we have a special at the moment for COVID-19. So if you use the code free premium, we're giving away premium accounts during this time so that you can, basically analyze your own motivations and see how much of those motivations are in your natural role.
Yeah, I'll put the link and the code in the description so that people can try. I just want to mention that I gave it a try, and I found it really accurate. Even the things that I guess
Oh
are
my
weakness,
God.
even my weaknesses, and I hate to admit it, I guess,
Oh,
but
wow.
it's so true.
Yay.
So at least now I have a little bit more clarity, and I can understand what I need to work for, or at least find a partner who can complement me.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's been in a way, in a way. I suppose not enlightening, because I guess I knew that, but I suppose it makes me know that I really do need to work on that if I'm going to make some improvements. So, yeah.
Yeah. And then, and the great thing is it's also, but knowing when is that weakness, in what context is it a weakness? Because a lot of the time it could be a real strength, but in a different context it's a weakness. So you won't, that may not be great for that, but it is great for what you do. So I'll give you an example of mine. I have really, really low what we call assertiveness, which is telling people what to do. But however, as a coach, that's perfect because my job is not to tell you what to do. My job is to help you uncover what you need to do. Let you do that. So a mentor would be a person who is asserting, here's the advice, here's what I tell you to do. But if I'm keynoting and I'm doing a corporate presentation, I'm going to have to be asserting that, hey, this is something that your company needs to build its culture, to know its collective company-wide motivations, and where is it a blind spot. So just knowing the different contexts is super important. That yes, it's a weakness in this general entrepreneurship or general business leadership, but in your role that you do, it may be perfect. So, and then exactly that when you said finding team members to complement. So I know a founder in one of my second alumni program. She was a super genius at UX UI customer experience. She's just one of the most brilliant people I've ever met. So she hired roles all around her. So you know what, this is my genius, but I don't need the initiation, I don't need the financial commercial, I'll find someone else to do that. So, and so it's now like a super duper, it's like one of the biggest digital banks in Australia that she's a co-founder of. But knowing that and not feeling like you have to be everything, but they maybe just, well, if as a founder, I'm going to need these 5 key things. If I'm low on one of them, maybe my co-founder can complement me. So that's where you can really optimize the team approach, but knowing up front is, it's a good thing. So, and then it also helps you maybe in your next role or the next thing you do, you can curate more around things that are naturally in alignment with your natural style. But yeah, awesome. I can't wait to check out your profile.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I encourage people to try it as well. It's really enlightening, and hopefully, people will benefit from that. On that note, Annie, thank you so much for your taking the time to have a conversation. I found it really helpful. I'm sure the listeners will be too, and I wish you all the best for Fingerprint for success.
Thank you. Thanks so much for having me. I really, really enjoyed it. Yeah.
It's my pleasure. Cheers.
Thanks, Nick.